Hello, welcome everyone to our conversation Café, the politics of being BIPOC at work. We would like to start this off with a land acknowledgement. So we would like to take this moment to acknowledge the lands that we are on at the University of Alaska Anchorage. Despite centuries of colonization and genocide, the Indigenous people of this land continue to persist and continue to steward the lands. We are located on the unceded lands of the Dena'ina people. I would also like to take this moment to say that while I recognize that a land acknowledgement is not a direct act of land back or decolonization, I affirm my responsibilities and invite you to do the same in amplifying Indigenous voices, standing in solidarity with Indigenous communities where you live, and respecting Indigenous protocol. I hope you can take a moment to acknowledge the land you are on. If you aren't sure about the land you are on, we're adding a link to the YouTube chat for you to start learning more about the Indigenous people whose land you occupy. I would also like to take a moment to recognize the ongoing attacks from legislative attempts to curtail research that uplifts marginalized communities to the physical threats and attacks on communities of color and marginalized groups in the world and in the United States. Just at the beginning of this month, Black History Month, there were a number of bomb threats to historically Black colleges and universities. And we at Multicultural Student Services and at UAA stand in solidarity with those HBCUs, communities of color, and all scholars and activists working to dismantle systems of oppression in general. So I hope you can take a moment and also a deep breath with me to recognize this moment and to be in solidarity with folks. We also would like to acknowledge the Black Lives Matter movement as our society continues to engage in how to right the wrongs of institutional and systemic racism that has methodically put Black and Brown people in physical, financial, and emotional peril. The MSS team and the planning team for this event would like to boldly affirm that Black Lives Matter. Solidarity is necessary for liberation, and it will take all of us to actively push against systems of oppression. Welcome to this space, everyone. I'm Sarah Caldwell-Can. I use she and her pronouns, and I work at Multicultural Student Services at the University of Alaska Anchorage. We're excited that you're here and excited to be in this new space. Some of y'all are on YouTube. And I'm fascinated by this. Feels so fancy. In general, Conversation Café is a facilitated space where participants can learn critical concepts that will challenge the ways that we understand how systems of oppression show up in our lives. Today, we're talking about what it means to be professional. And as we reflect on the racial reckoning and maybe racial moment of 2020 and 2021, we want to consider how race and racism show up in the workplace. And this conversation is about bringing those issues to the front. So we're going to be talking about the implied meaning of professional work standards and how racism and other systems of oppression show up at work. We're also going to be talking about the unique assets and strengths BIPOC folks bring to the workplace. We will also hopefully engage and talk about what it means to be an active ally at work and how we can all take a stand for racial justice. We hope that those of you who are listening get a chance to consider how racism is endemic in our workplaces and in universities and higher ed, and the extra burden this places on Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. A couple of logistics. If you're in the YouTube chat, your presenters and panelists can see that, and y'all are welcome to use that to communicate with each other and to participate in this. It's a little different than if we're on Zoom. It's a little different than when we're on Zoom, so we can't see y'all, but we know you're there and we're excited that you're there. Before we get into really all the pieces of our conversation today, we have a few things that we want to share. And as a follow-up for everyone who registered, we'll send out some of these terms and ideas so that you're not just hearing them today, but you also have something to look at. So first, BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. We name Black and Indigenous folks specifically to honor the distinct ways that those communities have contributed to our society and to specifically center them. BIPOC together, in my opinion, is similar to some other names like women of color who, as Loretta Ross says, this is a solidarity definition, a commitment to work in collaboration with other oppressed women of color who have been minoritized. So to me, I think of BIPOC as a political designation. At the same time, we should recognize the limitations of that naming. We're not just trying to lump together all those who are racially minoritized into one group. And so when we are referring to specific identity, we use the most specific designation or refer to people how they would refer to themselves. So today we say BIPOC, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, and that is this solidarity and specific designation. Next, I'll talk a little bit about professionalism. Professionalism as a construct built within our society, like whiteness at work and how it shows up, is all connected to the ways that we understand what professionalism is, right? Let's see. The dominant identities in our society have really built what we think of as professional. And so diversifying our workplaces or our universities and having true and meaningful inclusion has to go beyond just hiring more people of color. Before we get into our conversation today, I hope each of you can take a moment to reflect on what our society considers to be professional. So specifically think about maybe professional attire, how we value quantity at work sometimes over quality, innovation, or creativity, and what types of communication is most highly valued. So maybe just take a moment, think about what fits into that definition of professional and kind of what comes to mind, like what pictures come to mind. Another term that I wanted to talk about before we get into things is code switching. So folks will be talking about code switching today. And this is when people change their appearance or communication styles to fit in or to assimilate in different places. And one example from an event that happened last year with Career Services and Multicultural Student Services about natural hair at work. One statistic from that I like to share is how Black women are 80% more likely to change their natural hair to meet social norms or expectations at work. So code switching is kind of when we put on a different way of communicating or a different way of being because we are trying to meet standards of professionalism at work or in other contexts. So in today's conversation, you will see 4 folks besides myself. There will be recent alum and current students, and they'll be talking about being Black and being folks of color in higher ed and at work. And you can submit questions. So we'll also have time for Q&A that's open. So you can submit questions through the YouTube chat, and we'll have time at the end, and I'll just share those questions out with our panelists. Okay. Next, I'm going to introduce our panelists. And I'm really excited to introduce everyone. I know everyone, and I'm so glad that they're here. And then you get to hear less from me and more from other people. So first, y'all will be hearing from Tamia Bunton, who's a second-year student majoring in psychology. She's actively involved with Multicultural Student Services and participates in lots of clubs and organizations at UAA and also in the Anchorage community. After that, we'll be hearing from Jessie Psyche, who's a 2019 graduate with their Bachelor of Fine Arts in Hand-Built Ceramics and also an incoming Master of Social Work student. They currently work for UAA in the admissions office and have also been engaged in events at Multicultural Student Services. You will also hear from Jerica Cowan, who's a junior and is majoring in nursing. She just got back from a semester abroad in South Korea, and we're so excited that she got to go and also excited that she's back here with us. Jerica is a mentor at Multicultural Student Services for first and second year students and has been part of the MSS family for quite some time. And then, of course, like you saw on all of the images and everything, we'll be hearing from Darius Northern. Darius is the founder and creator of People of Color Clothing Company. His clothes make bold and provocative statements about racism, power, and privilege in the US. Darius grew up in Tennessee and moved to the Pacific Northwest for college. People of Color Clothing aims to educate, generate conversations, and create opportunities for people to examine their conscious behavior on topics primarily related to racial identity, racism, and discrimination. By wearing people of color clothing, folks are able to embrace their racial identity while bringing attention to the underlying social factors and discrimination that people of color face every day. So the format of this is that the three folks I introduced first will be each in conversation with Darius. And I wanted to say that I'm really excited to bring this here to UAA. I personally know about People of Color Clothing because of the following and solidarity it created at Oregon State University, where Darius went to undergraduate, got his undergraduate degree, and also where I previously worked. And I saw this basically movement through clothes, where folks were proud to wear these clothes and people were wearing them for events, and it really had this feeling of solidarity and people being really proud of their identity and being in things together. So I'm really excited for this conversation here at UAA and hope that we can bring that kind of energy to our campus. So that's enough from me that y'all have heard. I'm gonna hand this off, and I know that maybe Tamia might be still in transition, so I might ask, see if Tamia, if you're ready, I want to hand it off to you.
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready. I'm sorry, I'm in the car right now and I cannot turn on my camera on right now, but I'll be at my destination soon. But I just want to say thank you for having me here. And Mr. Darius, it's really awesome to see that you're spending time with us and having this conversation with you. And just would like to know what motivated you to start this amazing clothing line. That's what I would like to know.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Of course, I'm Darius Northern, the creator of the People of Color Clothing brand. And one of the things that motivated me to start this brand was I don't know. I just wanted to express myself cathartically, and I think through that process of wanting to express myself, I like to say I accidentally started a clothing brand. But to see that clothing brand kind of take shape, give some of the things that I was doing purpose in regards to, taking that cathartic expression from a personal thing to a we thing to a us thing to a business thing has been quite the journey. So, starting the People of Color Clothing brand has been it's been tremendous. It's been humbling. It's been challenging. It's been all of these different things. But at the end of the day, I feel like I've been able to impact people the way that I have. And just a little small breakdown of my brand. The front, I want the front to exemplify unity amongst all of us as people of color. And, I want people to feel a sense of pride and admiration and I want people to feel seen, and I think that, the POC logo, as polarizing as it can be for some, I feel like it kind of checks that box of allowing people to say, hey, I am here, right? And although our experiences aren't monolithic, I think it's cool to see people kind of rally around the brand, to Sarah's point, in different times of me doing this. But what makes my brand kind of different and distinct is the back. The back is where I strategically place things. So, I when I started the brand, I would sit right in the front row, right in front of the professor with provocative statements on the back of my garments. And that begun to that begun to really get people curious and kind of conjure up thought around people. And that was the goal of my brand, was to or that is the goal of my brand, is to provoke that thought, right? Provoke that conversation. I want people to receive some of the messaging on my back, process it, and disperse, right? And I always say that, it's potential controversy with trying to do that, but I try to walk in that gray area of being provocative but not disrespectful. And that's pretty much my brand in a nutshell. And that's what has gotten me here today. And that's what, I don't know. I'm just super excited to be here, and I'm super excited to be sharing my brand, my thoughts on the subject. And I'm glad that you guys are having me.
That is really awesome. Your story is very amazing, and I think it's beautiful, and the meaning behind your clothing line is amazing. And I remember you talking about your journey and the essence of your clothing brand. And in saying that, what is something that surprised you as you were developing your clothing line?
Something that really surprised me was the camaraderie that it conjured up. I wasn't anticipating as many people being invested in my brand, right? And then, kind of to Sarah's point earlier, at Oregon State, seeing people kind of rallying around the POC brand, and seeing people really taking refuge in it, right? And I think through those experiences, people allowed me to build my mission statement. People allowed me to build the ethos of my brand through just experiencing different people and how they felt in my garments. And three prominent words that came up was community, confidence, and culture. I feel confident when I'm wearing your garments. I feel a sense of community when I see other people wearing the garments, and the culture, right? We all, like I said earlier, our experiences aren't monolithic. So it's cool to see people customize their POC gear. It's cool to hear some of the stories that are associated with some of the people that wear our garments. So whether it's a multiracial story, biracial story, immigration story, a Black story, an Indigenous story, it's cool to learn different cultures through my brand. So that's something that I was really surprised, that just the camaraderie and the rallying. My brand was almost like a rallying point for people to express themselves and show up in. And that's by far probably one of the biggest surprises so far. And seeing like famous people kind of reach out to me at points, asking for gear. Like those are probably like the two top things.
That is amazing. That is really cool. And one last question. I know you've already talked about this already, but why choose POC as the name of your company?
I think that the original name that me and my cousin wanted to start out with was a Black experience, right? I think moving to Oregon from the East Coast brought about just a litany and a conglomerate of emotion and depression and anxiety and stuff like that. And we wanted to call our brand a Black experience because of that, right? I wanted to put things on a shirt that really illuminated my experience as a Black man, as a Black person. And me and my cousin, we went back and forth with names and stuff like that. And when I made my first sale to an individual named Bright, who was on the OSU football team, when I gave him, we didn't have a shirt per se, but it looked kind of weird having just a blank front and stuff on the back. So I don't know who came up with the name between me and my cousin, but it was perfect. I felt like the people of color could be inclusive. It could be, versatile. It's just the name is so versatile. It's so inclusive. And we really wanted to make sure that we had, diversity within some of the rhetoric that we put on the back of our shirts. So, that was one of those things that that just made the most sense, right? The Black experience kind of capped us. But, through some of my classes at Oregon State, I realized this is more than just a Black issue. This is a us issue. This is a POC issue. So it's cool to really try to build that community and that camaraderie around, a name. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Okay, so I come from a variety of different learning experiences. Although a majority of my education is from America, I also went to the school in the Philippines and recently in Korea, like mentioned, where the lifestyle and culture is very different. So, hoping some can relate, what are some advantages and disadvantages of people like me who come from a variety of backgrounds growing up in relation to already learned appropriate conduct, communication, or cultural soft skills when coming into a new school or workplace?
I think, you coming in with, did you say you spent most of your time in America or in another place?
In America, but I started off in another place and just recently entered a new one. And so, what are like the good things and the bad things of those, like as I go and move forward into new places?
I think, the diversity of thought. I think diversity brings about an element of creativity, right? So you've been able to see different types of cultures, different type of workplaces, different type of environments, and I think those are some of the things that you can now bring into your next destination, right? So whether it's your local community or your workplace, I feel like the diversity of thought, just it produces creativity, right? So when you go to your next place, you've seen 3 or 4 or 5 different places culturally. I think that allows for creativity, that allows space to explore, and that allows you to bring a different perspective to future employers or future partners in business. So I think seeing a multitude of cultures is to your benefit for sure.
Can you see any like disadvantages to that or no?
I don't necessarily see it as a disadvantage. Yeah, I really can't see. I can't really say that there's any disadvantages in my opinion. I think having diversity, unless there's like a language barrier of some sort through your travels, that can be seen as a disadvantage. But holistically, I feel like it being well traveled, experiencing different locations can really bring about, again, creativity. It can produce thoughts. And I think that's an advantage that I feel like, doesn't yield any disadvantages.
Thank you. I've never really thought of it that way, and so I think that's like a really great mindset, especially coming from a bunch of different places and owning it in one place. Following up, how much of a change do people or workplaces need to have in order to like assimilate in this concept of professionalism, if any, or like what can be done to minimize burden and become a more inclusive and adaptable space and an adaptable space for like all different identities?
Could you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah. How much of a change do people or workplaces need to have, if any, in to assimilate in this concept of professionalism? Basically, what can be done to minimize the burden and become a more inclusive and adaptable space for individuals and identities?
I think I think what we saw, especially, in lieu of George Floyd and the Black uprising in 2020, we see a lot of companies, promoting diversity and demoting, putting these pictures up on their websites and things of that nature. And that's cool, right? But I think sometimes environments aren't necessarily ready for that diversity, right? They may not have the people in place that are adept to handling that diversity. Maybe they're full of microaggressions, or they're just completely they're just not nuanced to having a diverse crowd of people. So I think from a business standpoint, I think it's important to really curate the right people to cultivate the environment that is sustainable for diversity, right? You can have diversity, but that diversity could be 1 or 2 people, and those 1 or 2 people can be, working in a toxic work environment, right? And that just compounds the work experience, right? And then that's going to lead to like maybe a higher turnover rate amongst your diversity. So I think, businesses could definitely, make sure that they are vetting people that they allow into their businesses and that represent their business. And, once diversity, once that takes shape, you can really mold diversity in a very unique and positive and non-toxic way. So that'll probably be my answer for that question.
Thank you.
For sure.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Darius. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to talk about professionalism, being told to be professional, and how someone can respond to that. Professionalism shows up in many ways, including how people are expected to dress and speak at work. In our society, there are dominant identities overall and in the workplace specifically. For example, most office temperatures are set to a comfortable level for men in business suits, but this isn't the most comfortable setting for all employees. There have been multiple occasions in my life, and I'm sure in many other people's lives here today, where we've been told to grit our teeth, swallow our pride, be professional, and be the bigger person. Or, frustratingly enough, we were told to be grateful for the progress that we're experiencing now, whereas our experience now ebbs and flows with the tides of the evolution of our society and humanity. And that is sometimes really hard to respond to in a cool and calm and safe manner. So, with all that being said, Darius, can you tell us about a time where you were told to be professional at work or school? How did that make you feel, and what kind of actions or response did you take?
I think for me, I have a very unique background. I spent a little bit of time in the military, and that's like the ultimate, I guess, tier of professionalism is the military and maybe the police force. But being in that environment to where, I'm having to shave my face and cut my hair and stuff like that. It was really hard on me, and I think that I struggled with that for the duration of my small military career. And towards the tail end of my career, there became a problem with my hair, right? So that was a big issue, and it was kind of, I wouldn't say dehumanizing, but there were moments where I would be in the office of a superior, and they would literally take a ruler and put it in my hair to measure the length of my hair to tell me whether I was in regulations or out of regulations. And I felt like the appearance, of some of my Black counterparts, we kind of went through a different type of reprimanding when it came to our appearance, right? So for Black women, it could have been, the braids or something like that, or dreads, or tattoos or something like that. So those are instances where you kind of got to swallow your pride and diet itself to accommodate, fitting into this image of professionalism. And I think, that's just an instance for me personally, that where I kind of had to get checked, and I had to check myself to really, fit into the environment that I saw myself to be in. So that's probably one of the few examples that I can bring up. But that one kind of stuck with me, because that one was it was really weird, because it was weird in the context that there wasn't a lot of Black people in my division, and they got the Black people to tell me that I was out of regs, even though it was a situation where there was one of my white colleagues, sounding the alert to people, and then, they didn't come to me directly, but they sent the Black people to tell me that, hey, they want to see you and they want to talk to you, and then, they used them to reprimand me. And it was just a really awkward situation for me and for them, because we were really good friends, and now they're having to tell me yo, you got to cut your hair or you can't work here anymore. So it was just a really weird situation. And it's not a situation that I'm sure is I'm not alone in experiencing stuff like that. So that again, that's probably all I can really think of on that topic.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and that perspective with us. As a follow-up to that, I'd like to ask you about code switching and double consciousness. How do you think these have impacted you and how you show up in different situations?
Oh, for sure. I think code switching is just if you're a person of color, I feel like code switching is just in your DNA. It's just one of those things that you just kind of do unconsciously, right? So it's just like, for me, when I'm around my boys, it's a different handshake. When I'm at work, it's a more professional handshake. But code switching is just one of those things that it's in our DNA, right? And for me, I kind of heard it. It started when I was young. I would hear my mother pick up the phone, and you kind of like turn on that voice. And I think it was a movie called Sorry to Bother You that kind of illustrated that kind of dynamic of, kind of altering your voice to perfect like this professional mode. So code switching is just like, it's just in our DNA. And I think W.E. Du Bois, I believe in a book of the Soul of Black Folk, he wrote about double consciousness. And that's one of those things to where like you exist in two worlds, right? You exist in the world that you identify as, whether it's Black, multiracial, Hispanic, Asian, but then there's the white world that we all live in. So you have to, unbeknownst to us, unconsciously to many of us, we walk into these white spaces and we turn ourselves off and we accommodate to meet the professional standard and to essentially make white people comfortable. So code switching and double consciousness, I feel like, is in the DNA of a lot of POC out there.
Thank you for sharing those experiences with us.
For sure.
To piggyback on what Miss Jessie said, I agree that some people of color, sometimes we carry these sort of burdens sometimes when we have to go to our place of works. And I would just want to ask you some questions about that. So often in higher education, people talk about how we need to diversify and increase representation of BIPOC or rationalized people. But there's also an extra weight that folks with these identities carry when they show up to spaces not made for them. And I also want to talk about boundaries with that as well. And so the question I have for you is, are there any instances with you or with people around you that made an impact on how boundaries could be made in environments that make them uncomfortable?
Boundaries from whose perspective? My perspective, or like boundaries from whose perspective, in your opinion?
Ask boundaries from your perspective.
I think in dealing with that kind of situation, I feel like it's important to communicate, especially as a person of color. So like when I go into, or a Black man, when I go into situations, sometimes I'm pretty quiet just to kind of read the room and see like who is who and what is what. But instantly I know, like, because of my height, I know a question about basketball is coming, a question about football is coming, a question about sports is coming. So, what I do to like draw that boundary so people don't come up to me and talk about sports all day is like, oh no, I don't play sports. I'm into field hockey or something that throws them off and something that's like out of the ordinary. But that's just a strategy I use to kind of draw that line of like, yo, you're not about to talk about Dame Lillard every time you see me, or talk about Russell Wilson every time you see me, because that kind of gets redundant. So, for me, there's subtle ways that I use, there's subtle things that I do to kind of draw that line. And even when my hair was kind of like crazy, people always commented on my hair and stuff like that. And again, I would find simple things depending on who I was dealing with to kind of draw that line of like, yo, I don't want to talk about that, fam. Like, I just want to be me. I want to exist. Let's talk about regular things. That's not dealing with hair or sports or basketball or football or whatever. So there's subtle things you can do. But sometimes in a workplace, I understand, or even in the educational space, it can be hard. People sometimes are unaware of their microaggressions. So depending on the person, you can check them immediately. In a very constructive and positive and, non-abrasive way, or you can just merely bite the bullet and continue to take it, but then that's going to take a toll on your mental health. So there's different strategies you can implement to kind of like lessen that barrier.
I love that. That's a really great piece of advice, especially for those who can sometimes be a little shy. Sometimes I can be a little afraid to speak up for myself when I see there's something wrong or it's offending me because of my race. And that can be really hard for some people like me to kind of stand up for myself and let that person know that what they're doing may be offensive to me.
It's
Yeah, go ahead.
exhaustive too. And it's exhaustive too, right? Having to check people
Yeah.
constantly and having to like
Mhm.
be that black person or be that black guy or be that black girl that's like very outspoken and checking people all the time. So it's, again, there's a yin and then there's a yang, there's a give and a take. So it's just like choosing your battles sparingly, right? Because you don't want to be, casted as, oh, don't talk to her or don't talk to him because they're gonna spaz out on you or whatever. But sometimes people need to be checked. Sometimes like you need to be like, yo, like I'm not having that, and it may not be for you in that instance. It might be for the next person that pioneers that space, right? So you might be not pioneer that space, but you might be pioneering a space and you have to take those lumps, right? When you're the first in a space, like, and you're the diversity and you're the first, you're the first gen diversity. Sometimes you're going to have to take some hits on the chin, whether it's from an educational space or workspace. But the more you speak up and the more you check people, the easier you make it for the next person behind you sometimes. And that's kind of, and that's kind of how I move. It's just like if I see something, being the person that I am, I'm probably going to speak up 9 times out of 10. It's going to be moments where I shut up, but in most cases I'm gonna speak up because I know sometimes it's like I'm speaking up for myself, but I'm also speaking for the person who's going to be in that space behind me. So
there you go.
Yeah, man, it's important to speak up and it's important to like set that boundary in a very respectful way. It's just like, the first time is going to be respectful. The second time I'm going to be respectful again. But the third time, like, come on, fam, like there's an issue and we gotta talk about it in some way, shape or form.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to continue the topic, taking a stand and setting boundaries. Part of being a professional is somehow remaining graceful and safe in the face of racism and discrimination. It's something that I really struggle with, and I'm sure many others do too. So we're not alone. It's hard to find a balance between how deeply upsetting that it can be and a balance between fitting in boxes that we have to fit in according to our workplaces, which are largely ran by white people. So, with that in mind, POC Clothing Company is about building community and taking a stand through clear statements on your clothes. Can you give us some examples of conversations that the clothing statements have created? And in addition to that, can you also explain to us the difference between challenging privilege and white shame?
Oh, for sure. I'm going to start backwards. So, a lot of times and a lot of drawback that I get from with my brand, especially online, the people that sit there and send these thought-provoking, loving comments. I'm just kidding, but like the people that come in my comments, my DMs, making threats or making accusations or whatever. If I have time, I'll talk to them and I'll set them straight. But if I don't have time, then I just kind of let it go. But if I got time, like I'm gonna set them straight. So one of the things that kind of came up early was like, yo, this brand is white shaming, and it's not. I feel like the visceral reaction when someone's privilege is challenged is to say, oh my God, like this is wrong, I'm uncomfortable. And that's what people do when they're uncomfortable, is it's like they try to diffuse the situation by throwing accusations or throwing labels or names, race baiter, this so in the beginning it was like, all right, what do I do, because I know where my heart is coming from and I know what my brand is standing for. But it's important for me to educate people on like, this isn't me white shaming you, right? This is more so like me trying to set up opportunities for you to examine your conscious behavior, right? Your visceral reaction is to say, oh my God, you're attacking me. But it's more so like, I'm interrupting your normalcy. I'm interrupting the fact that you don't have to think about your identity ever, right? When you walk into a room, you walk into the room, you know, as a identifying white person, right? You walk into this room and you don't have to worry about your hair. You don't have to worry about, you know, you're taking your hood off. You don't have to worry about taking your hands out your pocket. You don't have to worry about your appearance when you walk into a room. But when you come in contact with a POC garment, your normalcy is going to be challenged, right? So some of the stuff on the back of my garment that really provokes thought and conversation, or just, I cover a litany of things, right? From indigenous issues to lost languages, right? What did indigenous people speak before they were forced to, you know, learn Portuguese, French, English, and Dutch, right? Those are questions that is very simplistic in nature, but we forget that the fact that we're speaking English is from England, right? The people in Brazil that speak Portuguese, that's from Portugal. People who speak Spanish, you know, in Mexico and Central America, South America, Spanish is from Spain, right? So what is your native tongue, right? So these are questions that I ask, again, just to interrupt people's normalcy, right? I'm not trying to, you know, point my finger. I'm just merely trying to get you to think a little deeper about your identity and how conquest has really shaped and molded the world. So, but I also have pieces that empower, right? Immigration is beautiful. One of my best-selling garments, you know, immigration is beautiful. And then on the bottom of that, it says, you know, I represent the legacy of someone who sacrificed everything in search of a better future. So I try to create those moments to where, you know, whether you want to come out, make a provocative statement, right? Ask a thought-provoking question. What does it mean to be white? How often do you think about it? How would your life be different if you weren't? Or if you want to have an empowerment piece, whether it's women empowerment, you know, immigration awareness. It's just a litany of things. I have over 50 different things within my collection and I'm adding weekly. So I just kind of go with the flow. As I expose myself to different things, I try to articulate that experience in form of a shirt, right? Very simplistic format. And I try to make it clear, concise, and simple. That way, when you're standing in line, whether it's at the grocery store, pizza parlor, ice cream parlor, that person behind you is able to receive it, process it, and disperse. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, awesome. Totally answers it. And I think, yeah, that's a really powerful and accessible way to help people broaden their horizons or, yeah, like you said, interrupt their normalcy, which is going to expand people's minds. So, continuing on, thinking about accessibility, for me, taking a stand means showing up authentically at work and on campus. Do you have any advice for people who want to show up or set boundaries but are struggling with things like anxiety, depression, or behavior that might cause them to isolate themselves?
Yeah, for sure. And I think coming out of the pandemic, that's a great question, because we spent so much time with ourselves. And if you're in Oregon or the Pacific Northwest, you know, the weather during these winter months is just kind of grueling and depressing. But I don't know. I think that's a hard question because I know for me, you know, if I ever were to venture into, I guess, the corporate world, I feel like it would be hard for me, right? I think that, you know, entering those corporate spaces, entering the workforce, is unique because like now, you know, employers have so much access to you, right? They're going to check out your LinkedIn. They're going to check out your Facebook. They're going to check out your Instagram. They're going to check out your Twitter. So it's like, that's where the process begins. So you're kind of washing yourself away, right? You're archiving pictures. You're deleting old tweets. You're deleting old pictures. You're deleting experiences that are going to make you look a little less urban and ethnic, right? To fit this mode of professionalism. So, you know, how do you bypass that? I think it starts with your research, right? It starts with you aligning yourself with the company, with the brand that allows you to come in and be who you are, right? So it's some of these bigger companies, they don't allow you to do that in most cases. So it's really creating and doing the research and creating and making sure that you're walking into an environment that cultivates and nurtures your you-ness, your uniqueness. So, you know, those are some of the things I would say to look for in your process, you know, taking the responsibility of being transparent with your employer, you know, when they turn to questions and like, hey, you got any questions for us? You know, outside of talking numbers and salary, because you know we all need to live and get paid. But asking them about their diversity approach, right? How often are you doing diversity training? You know, have you had any accidents within the last, you know, calendar year? How did you handle those accidents? You know, how will I be perceived? You know, how would you react if I came in wearing, you know, this type of hairstyle or wearing this whatever, you know, what's the dress attire? So asking, really challenging your employer, even going into the door of like, yo, like, I want to know, obviously I'm a fit for your company or I wouldn't be here getting interviewed, but are you a fit for me? Right. And I think those are just small things that you can do just to avoid all of that. Right. Avoid, you know, washing yourself on Instagram and washing yourself on Twitter and all of that stuff. Like, challenge your employer to be like, yeah, what do you stand for? What are your ethos? You know, do you really value diversity, or is this just a PR stunt to make people think that, you know, you guys are like the most diverse company in the world? When I walk in, you know, I didn't see that. So it's like, you can turn the tables and really challenge the people that's involved in your hiring process.
Thank you for giving us those examples of accessible ways to show up.
For sure, for sure.
Moving from that, that was like a lot, and I was really impressed with all the answers that you gave. That really eye-opening to what, like, the small things you could do to make a big change. So now that it's 2020, we have like a big post-2020 racial justice movement the past 2 years. My question is, in the last 2 years, because of this big race awakening for a lot of people with like Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, now that the momentum seems to have slowed, where do you think we are in society with that? And can you talk about how 2020 has shaped or changed your work since?
Yeah, so see, I'm just trying to debate on whether I want to be honest or just honest. But I think 2020 was cool. I think the solidarity was cool to see. You know, a lot of people got some great footage, some great photos. You know, people were filling the stories up with all this, you know, cool information. But at a point, I want to call cap, right? Cap is just basically calling, you know, fraud or whatever, you know, in urban terms. But I think a lot of that was a facade, right? I think that it's one of those things that, you know, nobody cares until everybody does, right? And I think in that moment, everybody cared about getting justice for George Floyd and illuminating, you know, police brutality. But police brutality isn't the only way that racism shows up. And I think a lot of people feel like that they, you know, just because they, you know, they put the black square up, you know, they put some stuff on the story, they might have went to you know, got some photos at a protest or two, that they did their job. But it's not over. Like, you know, for a lot of us, most of us, we live racism every day, right? And I think it's sad to see that the momentum has kind of shifted and stopped. Because, you know, when you think about everything that happened in 2020, what did we really get out of it? Like, what was like, because we did this, because we marched, because we protested, but because we protested on, or we shut down, you know, Instagram for a day, like what did we get? You know, what's the reciprocity for our actions, right? It was nothing. So like, what did we really accomplish in that, right? And we have, you know, a lot of big brands I saw, like, you know, putting out this rhetoric of, you know, diversity this and Black Lives Matter this. But are you really like that? Like, are these businesses and brands really like that? Or was it just like a positive PR push that went with the times, right? So it's 2020 for me it's a love-hate relationship. I love to see the solidarity, the awareness and everything like that, but it was just crazy to see how everything switched, right? And now it's like, it's almost to our detriment, because now when Dante Wright died, it was like, damn, is this going to be a part 2? But I feel like the systems updated, right? So like Instagram changed their policies and you know, TikTok changed their policies and Twitter changed their policies to now it's like they'll never be shut down again the way that we did that in 2020. So, and when Dante Wright, when he was murdered, it was like he was on Instagram for maybe 3 days and then he was forgotten about, right? So it's just like, how did we really make progress? You know, like 2020 was cool, but just imagine if, like, you know, we embodied the energy of the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, right? A boycott that lasted 381 days. Like, imagine if we embodied that type of energy, the results we would get, right? So it's cool to see. It's cool to kind of look back and see the videos and the pictures and the people holding up the signs and stuff like that. But like, what did we get out of it? Right? Like, it's, my brand is still relevant and my brand should be relevant, right? I'm working to make myself irrelevant. And from 2020, from May 31st to February the 23rd, 2022, nothing has really changed. Like, so to me, I feel like 2020 was just a facade. It was performative, respectfully. And I'm glad to see that George Floyd got justice in a sense. Dante Wright, you know, the verdict came down for his thing yesterday. But it was, I don't know. 2020 is kind of fickle to me. It was cool to see, but at the same time, like, what did we get out of it? We got like nothing. So yeah, that's kind of depressing, but I know that's just kind of how I feel.
No, you're right. But with that, do you think there's a path, or like, what is the path forward for better racial justice with this? Because we did get a lot of, like, it was really nice to see like how united we were, but it was really disappointing to see how it's died down and it's only been 2 years compared to how it was back then, like you said, where it was like almost a year and there was a big difference. So
yeah,
path.
I don't know. I think we got to get more serious. Like, if we really want change, first off, it's going to take a collective unit, right? So people of color, is just like we're stronger together than we are apart, right? So, you know, there's going to take, we need to think legislation. We need to think policy. We need to think, you know, we need to think political power, right? Some of the things that don't change in this country is because it's not written into law or it's not written into policy, right? We can, you know, protest all day, but until Congress passes stuff that can really ignite change, we're just going to keep sputtering our wheels in the same place. So in order for change to happen, like, we literally have to get serious about it and not be so sometimey, you know. We'll protest something, we'll be mad about something for a couple of days, but then we're on to the next, you know, viral dance or the next viral video or the next trend, right? So I think the system does it does a really great job of distracting us and diffusing the situation with these trends and music and all of these different things. But until we get serious about change, things are just going to keep sputtering in place, and my grandkids are probably going to be living in the same type of society that I'm living in now. So until we get serious about all of this, I mean, I'm gonna do my best though. Like, from the seat that I'm sitting in the position that I'm at with my brand, I have a lofty vision for my brand, to create equity and impact all across the world, all across the country. And I'm gonna do my part, you know what I'm saying? But I will say, like, collectively, like unity, community, like, it really takes a collective unit to really and consistency to really ignite that change that I think you're speaking of.
Can I ask, how do you keep yourself motivated, or how you kept yourself motivated after seeing all that, and especially continuing your work with your POC clothing? Because I know that was a lot for you, as you said.
I think keeping myself motivated, it's not as hard as, I think in the beginning I used to want to quit, right? There was a moment in 2020 when things are starting to go back to normal, and I saw that we got nothing out of our actions, that I wanted to quit. I say, I'm wasting my time. Like, I'm wasting my time. Let me just give up, go get a regular job, you know, get the white picket fence, live the American dream, and do all of that, and just, you know, whatever. But those moments are few and far between. I think that I'm so invested in what I'm doing, and I believe in us so much that keeps me going. I think something that motivates me is simply going outside and seeing people and walking and just, seeing homeless people. Like, it's just the world around us, like that's my inspiration. Like, I really want to bring equitable resources to communities that need them, right? I really want to create an impact, right? I don't want to be selling garments forever, but garments they're basically the foundation that I'm going to use. It's basically allowing me to build my foundation to then, dive into more equitable things, right? I want a community center. I want to go on a college tour. I want to, do collaborations with people. I want to have, affiliate businesses. I want to educate people on, financial literacy, home ownership. I want to, credit. These are just stuff that can really impact and alter people's lives. I'm gonna do what I can from where I'm at with what I have to impact the community that I'm in. And once I'm able to do that, I want to replicate that all across the country. So I get discouraged sometimes. I won't even hold you, but I got to keep going, right? It's not about me, it's about us. And I think the bigger picture is I want to see, I don't want my kids, I don't want my future kids, I don't want my grandkids, I don't want my great grandkids to ever have to question themselves of, like, when Darius was here, what did he do? Did he have impact? Did he give everything that he could possibly give in his pursuit of creating equity and impact? And I want that question to be yes. So I don't know. It's easy to get discouraged living in this capitalistic, society that we live in, and media driven society that we live in, but I got to keep going. Like, it's not about me, it's about us.
I think that's a really powerful message, that it's not about just you, it's about everybody. And so I think that's nice. And you probably already said this, but as a little finisher is like, how can we build from the lessons that we learned in 2020 to improve society today, and also your workplaces, to like build a more comfortable, ideal future, like you said, for your future generations?
I don't think necessarily we build off of 2020. I think we learn from our failures of 2020, right? I think our failures are more evident than our achievements, right? Because we don't really have a lot of achievements from 2020 outside of, like, these photos and videos that are cool, right? But I think learning from our failures, the fact that we did stay consistent, the fact that business that promoted, equity and inclusion at their workplace probably isn't living up to their ethos, right? I think those are the lessons that can be had, is learning from our failures, right? Learning from that. So if it ever happens again, God willing, it doesn't happen again, for that particular reason, rest in peace, George Floyd. But in the unfavorable instance that it happens again, like, maybe this time we stay in that pocket a little longer. Maybe we really press the people that represent our states and this country to really pass things that are equitable, past things that are meaningful, past things that are really going to set a precedence for futures to come. And I think that's some of the things that we can really learn from and take heed to as we progress, in this country, in this world, and for years to come.
So y'all can stay on. I have some questions for everyone. I've been so excited to just hear y'all talking to each other. It's been amazing. So this is for all of you as panelists. So what advice would you have for Black, Indigenous, and students of color that you wish you knew earlier? And we can just go, like, if someone is ready, you can just unmute and then we can pass around. Okay, yeah, Jesse.
Advice that I wish I knew earlier is that it's okay to be angry and sad and feel the depth of your feelings about the situation that we're in, but try to always be as safe as possible. It has to be said that safety is a privilege, unfortunately, and while you're showing up and making statements and taking a stand, just keep in mind how precious your life is and how sharing your experience safely is a way that you can rebel against the unfair systems that we have to endure. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jessie. Also, I meant to say for everyone watching, if you all want to put more like questions, we'll have time for open Q&A like in the after this, so you can put them in the chat. But anyone else advice for students? Tamia?
No matter where you may be, whether it be at school or at work or anywhere, make the effort to find people that look like you, because it's important to have people who understand your experiences as well. I mean, I'm not saying don't just make friends with people that are the same color as you, but like get out there and make sure you have people that know what the struggle is, so you don't have to hold all that to yourself and feel like you're alone. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And to piggyback off of her point, I think, having that element of community is so important, right? Feeling like you're not alone, feeling like you're not carrying that burden by yourself is crucial in, establishing yourself in whatever environment that you're looking or you're seeking to establish yourself in. But some of the advice that I would have was basically that, it's that issue, that problem, that feeling is not going to last forever, right? So it's just like you have to endure, learn the lesson, and progress forward, get better from that environment, get better from that situation, get better from that issue, and just keep moving forward. Because I know a lot of times we kind of get so like bogged down with the idea of like this is happening right now, but we forget that there's a tomorrow and a day after and a day after. So just keeping that positive perspective and really looking at, your problems and your problems as lessons that you can use to make yourself better in the future.
For me, I guess I wish the advice I got early is, especially coming into nursing school, that I just learned is just being a better advocate for yourself as well as others around you. I mean, you really just have to speak up, and I know it's going to take a lot to be more comfortable into saying what you have to, how you feel more often, but the more you're able to speak up, not only for yourself, but for others, a better environment. It becomes a better environment that you're working with. It makes it more comfortable. So.
Thanks, y'all. Those are such good answers, everyone. Community and safety, finding your people. Yeah, this is amazing. Okay, so now this next question is also for all of you, and we can do the same thing. I'll just go same kind of however. What is something that you wish that people who are striving to be allies know or knew? Something that you wish they already knew. Tamia.
The importance of seeing things from someone else's perspective and not just looking at your perspective, because I've been taught that all my life, and just to not care so much about me, but to also see things from other people's perspective, because you never know what someone else could be going through, and you don't know their experiences either. And seeing things from their perspective will help you not only relate to them more, but it will also help you to stay more engaged with them. Thank you.
That's so well said, Tamia. I just want to follow up with what you said. I want allies to know that the best thing they could do for us is be a good listener too. Like try to see things from our perspective. And when we need to talk about what it's like to be Black, Indigenous, people of color at work or in general in this world, we need a safe and validating place to express ourselves. So, yeah, having the perspective to be empathetic and being a good listener.
Yeah, for sure. And I think beyond that is just the application of the things that you hear and you learn, right? I think, BIPOC individuals, we've said it in every which way possible, trying to get the attentions of white people to say, hey, this is the issue. This is how we feel. This is what we want to change. And at some point, it's just, at some point you have to look at yourself in the mirror and ask, like, do I really want to change? Do I really want to be that change? Do I want to be the embodiment of change? Because I feel like we've said it all. We've done it all. We've protested. We've looted. We've boycotted. We've done everything that we possibly can to get the attention of, the people. And I think it comes down to like, yo, do you really want to change at the end of the day? Or are you so comfortable in the privilege of the perception of whiteness that, you're comfortable, you're nestled in, you don't want to change? So it's one of those things that's like, advising people or giving them advice on how to, maneuver in this particular situation is like, I'm sure they've heard it all. I'm sure like they know, but at some point they have to have that conversation with themselves of like, all right, this is work that has to be done every single day. This isn't like I'm gonna post this on my Instagram and it's gonna give me some dopamine on Sunday, but Monday through Saturday, I'm constantly giving people microaggressions. It's like this is work that you have to be the embodiment of change every single day. And that's, I don't know, that's not really advice, it's more of a statement, but that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I can actually build off of that. With good listening, especially if you want to be an ally, you have to be willing to learn. You have to take that time, because like there's a lot of people that say, oh, I didn't know, I didn't want, I wasn't aware of that. But is it because you don't know, or is it because you didn't want to take the time to know? Like, it doesn't take a lot to Google or like search up a couple articles to learn a little bit more of whatever somebody's telling you. So you really have to, like you said, speak within yourself of like, yeah, you're talking to somebody, you want to be an ally, but how much are you willing to learn about them on top of building yourself in order to make that connection? And so.
Yes, amazing action items and reminders for folks who are listening in. I feel like one thing that I always think about that I think connects to all this is like people don't get to designate themselves as your ally. Like, you're an ally of a community if that community designates you as an ally. And it's also forever work, right? It's a verb, really. It's not just like this noun, like I'm an ally. But if you just, do something one day, like post a black square and nothing else, like what have you actually done? I think that's come up a bunch of times today. It's like, I don't get to say I'm an ally just because I did something that I thought was the right thing, right? Like, it has to be something that the community I'm saying I'm an ally for, they designate that status. Yeah, those are wonderful action items that y'all shared and really important. So we have a few questions, some that came in before today. So I'll start with that. And then just a reminder to folks listening, and you can still ask questions and put them in the chat. So this is for any of y'all can answer. And I know that there's been maybe some talk around this a little bit, but what are some in the moment coping strategies that you use with coworkers who might be unintentionally or intentionally microaggressing you at work?
For me, I would say that this is kind of petty, but I just kind of avoid people. Just kind of to lessen the mental burden of like having to go through whatever they're going to put me through in that moment. So I just remember, like, if I was walking through the warehouse or whatever, or office setting, and I saw an individual that I know, like, okay, he's going to stop me, he's going to ask me about something, or he going to say something, I would just kind of go out of my way to just avoid that person. So I think, and that's kind of petty, kind of childish, but like I would avoid those interactions with that individual. because I just didn't want that energy. I didn't want to deal with that in the moment. So walking around, taking a long way around is definitely a way I handle things.
I really like the thought of avoiding, if there's not a more clear way that we can tell people that they're being microaggressive. I think that is like an act of care for ourselves, not to waste time, space, energy, and breath on those interactions. One thing that I do when I'm going through situations and moments of microaggressions is giving myself time and space in my mind to coach myself through the moment by affirming things that I know to be true about myself and, true about the goodness of humanity. So just trying to do positive mental attitude coaching in my head during those moments.
Avoiding is definitely one of my things, because usually, like, if you start to avoid somebody, they must have done it enough times to make it so that you stop confronting them. And so most people are usually understanding of that. And so just really take the time to like identify something, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to put yourself in that situation, because people will learn. Yes, like people will learn just by nonverbal actions, and so.
Yeah, thanks. I think avoiding and taking care of yourself is so important. And I think for folks who are listening who are maybe thinking back about like, wow, have I been avoided or has this happened? And I think also like so often people well-intentioned or well-meaning, especially white folks, are wanting to get feedback. But I think what y'all are saying and should be really important for people to hear is that you might not be in a space to give feedback, and that burden shouldn't be on you to teach somebody that that they're discriminating against you or hurting you. And sometimes like we can be in a space to say something, and I think kind of also going back a little bit, like people are gonna learn from that if they're wanting to learn from that, right? And even if you say something, they might not, and that takes so much extra energy, from you all too, or from us and from that experience. And it's like, how many times do I need to ask, men in meetings to not interrupt me before I just am like, okay, I'm just not going to say that, right? Or how many times do I need to tell people I'm old enough to be in my job and maybe just think I'm young because I'm an Asian American woman? And then people are like, it's a compliment. Like, it's not though, because then you don't listen to me and my position. That's not a compliment. Now everyone's listening to all these examples that are very personal to me. So I'm going to move to the next question. So let's see, what advice or suggestions do you have for BIPOC or folks of color who work in organizations that say or that are supposed to be supporting the BIPOC community, but the majority culture and attitudes of that organization are inherently white? So then, as you can see, Cal asked this question. This is so fancy. And then there's an expansion of that that's up on the screen. So how to navigate organizations that claim to serve BIPOC communities, but are primarily white, especially at the top, and still the sort of white-centric or predominantly white culture exists. You're on mute, Darius.
Yeah, coming from the military, I think diversity is at a premium in the military, but there is a white power structure that kind of illuminates itself on the culture of the military. But the thing that I can think of is like what's going on in the NFL right now, to where you have a individual who is Black and who is suing the NFL. But you know, the NFL in sports is a great example of this, right? You have these, you know, NBA cares and the NFL this that say, hey, like we support, you know, Black Lives Matter and Indigenous communities and all of this, and we're going to change the name and yada yada. But the power structure, the people that are in charge are all white. So it's just like, it's very, for me, it seems like more of a PR stunt, right? It's more of a we're going to say this because we're supposed to, right? We're going to say this because it's expected for us to say. But like, when you look at leadership, how diverse is your leadership, right? When you guys are having these management meetings, is that management room diverse, or is it just everybody that looks the same, right? Because if everybody looks the same, those issues are going to continue to get perpetuated, right? Those issues of not having diversity, those microaggressions, not handling, you know, HR issues promptly, like those things are going to continue to persist until you diversify that top level of management to where people can have diversity of thought. To her point earlier, when she talked about, you know, living in three different places, and, you know, how does that, you know, what is the advantages, what is the disadvantage? And I think that you know, in a workspace, it's important to have diversity, right? And that doesn't mean just color. That means people who identify as male, people who identify as non-binary, people who identify as women. Like it's really important to have a conglomerate of diversity in these upper management positions. That way, voices can be heard and feelings can be felt, right? And things change can ensue. So I think diversity from top to bottom and from top to, you know, bottom to top, I think that's imperative. That's super important.
Anyone else? Any thoughts?
Yeah, and this, in response to this question, I'm thinking about what Darius said and what Tamia said about finding people who look like you. I think in my position as a student employee at UAA and in positions I had once I graduated, it seems like I was in these organizations that were inherently white, and, you know, we're expected to like just fit into the boxes inside of that box, and somehow people who look like me and other, you know, BIPOC people, we always find a way to come together and at least have each other for solidarity. Like maybe we have to wait a little bit for our time to talk, but having the strength in numbers really helps us endure the times while we're waiting to talk.
I love that. I have a follow-up question that folks who I talk with a lot probably will find familiar, which is that I think, you know, being folks with marginalized identities in workspaces or, you know, in higher ed, that's a bit of survival, right? Like not only kind of something that we want to do, but it's also like what we need to do in order to survive and also thrive at predominantly white institutions, is to find community, build community, find our people. And that is extra work on us, right? Like that is something that we seek out and carry and do on top of our jobs or on top of being a student. So I'm just curious about, like, for each of you, how do you manage sort of that inherent tension of doing the things that help you survive and thrive in a predominantly white space, like finding your people, building community, creating clothing brands, to like, how do you balance that with also being able to care for yourself. And I know that it's like a Venn diagram, they're connected, and still, you know, that is, how also do you not burn out with that, right?
I keep doing the unmute mute thing, but I think burnout is a real thing, especially like when you're pioneering space, when you're having to I guess be the Rosa Parks of your environment or community or classroom or job or whatever. Like that gets hella tiring. And I know for me personally, I have a system to where like I'll make sure that I do the things that I need to do, the things that before I kind of die, because this is a daily thing for me. Before I dive in and like curate, you know, topics and research stuff and expose myself to the traumas of the past, like I try to make sure I do things that make me happy, right? I love clean spaces. I love to clean. Like I should open up a clean company if this business fails. But I love to clean. I love to do things that makes me happy. I love to go on walks without music, and that really calms me down and sets the tone for some of the things that I dive into. Whether it's, you know, the atrocities endured by Indigenous folks, or, you know, learning something new or reading a book or whatever. So it's just having a system, having those things that you can do that make you happy, whether it's, you know, exploring the outdoors or climbing or whatever. I think you just gotta have a system in place, and you might not be doing it from a business perspective like I am, but just, you know, if you're pioneering that space at work or at school, or you're getting talked over in a meeting or whatever, it's just like you gotta have it within your system, that space and that time, just to kind of woosah and just like find your peace again. Because if you're just battling that every single day, like you're gonna drive yourself crazy, you know. So it's important to have those moments of just solitude and peace and happiness within yourself.
On that a little bit is that instead of thinking of it like as a lot of people are at the top, you can also think of it as like you're with the top. It doesn't matter race or not. Like obviously you have skills and stuff that put you in that place. So that in and of itself is already a change that you're making for yourself and people who will come behind you. And so if you really use that to motivate yourself and the people, you know, same color, same whatever, like I think that's already like a big step forward to the change that you're going to see in a workplace where there's a majority and you're the minority. And so.
Yeah, Jesse.
I really relate to what everyone is doing to take care of ourselves while we're doing our heart work. It sometimes does feel like just an unbearable amount of tension, or that, yeah, the battle or the war is forever ongoing. It can be really hard to feel the burden and the enormity of that. But I really relate to Darius and so many other talented BIPOC artists. I really, really find a lot of comfort, joy, and purpose in making artwork, whether it's about, you know, different subjects, social justice, just random doodles. So that's what I like to do to take care of my heart work tension.
I love what all of you guys provided for this question. It is also very relatable as well to me. And I also think it's super important to know who you are as a person as well. Because if you don't know who you are, if you're not even confident in yourself and you don't know what you like or may dislike, you don't even know how to solve the problem you're seeking an answer to. I also find joy in like I love talking to people. I'm a very social person. So I also like finding people I'm comfortable with and talking to them about my issues that I may be having at school. I don't work, so it would probably mostly be at school if I have any issues at all. So just finding people who I can talk to, and also just knowing and being confident in who I am and knowing what I can accomplish as well.
That's a dope answer, really dope answer.
Yeah, y'all, these are great answers. This is like advice I wish I knew earlier. What y'all said. But also, I mean, I think it's also like an ongoing thing, right? Like, we might feel like we have it in one context or one day, and then something happens, and like what we were talking about. For me, I think similar to how Darius is talking a lot about the death of George Floyd and so many murders of Black folks at the hands of police. And for me, last year in March, when there were murders of Asian women in Atlanta, and I worked at the Asian and Pacific Cultural Center, I felt like this really big shift in trying to find that balance in my heart work, right? Because I was like, I'm trying to rally for my community, and like literally also as part of my job, as also my identities, and also I'm like trying to call my family and like take care of myself, and trying to take care of my staff that I was working with at the time. And everyone was in that place of both, like, we're processing, we're not really doing okay, and we're like trying to rally so we can be there for our community and for each other. And that was like such an immediate shift in that piece around like that tension between like being there for my community and taking care of myself, and that extra work, and how my identity showed up in that. So all I'm gonna say is, I know I made a joke before, but it's always like changing, right? Like the context might change or something might change how you do that. Well, we don't have any other questions from other folks, so I have like 2 questions for y'all, but I'll start with this, and then you can think about anything that you want to end with. So I'm just curious if there's just something that, actually, I'm gonna go back a little bit. So as y'all maybe can see, in behind Darius, there's a bunch of books, and he asked me this question. First of all, I like love all of those books. I'm very excited. But I'm curious from you all panelists if there is a book that you just like love and want to recommend, and share out with the world, and you can talk a little bit about it. And it could be something that feels really related to this conversation. Also, it totally doesn't have to be. Just like, y'all are whole people. And since I threw this question on you without you having any preparation for it, I will start and answer just so we can get us going. I think I want to say I love The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I think it's so relevant to the conversation that we're having, as also one of my favorite books ever. And part of it is because, even when times can be so tough and there's so much going on, we have to be able to imagine the world and the community that we want to create and that we want to live in. I always think about like a garden and seeds. So in the book, when the characters like bring seeds with them, and that's such a good metaphor, allegory, I don't know. Someone who's an English major can help me out with that part. But it's such a good, I want to say metaphor, having seeds, right? We have to bring the seeds with us if we want to cultivate the garden that we want. And we have to, pay attention to things so that they can grow. So that is my book. And I just want to pass it on, and y'all can answer what's one book that you want to recommend or just share about yourself to folks who are listening.
A book that I I would like to share with everyone is any of the self-help and philosophy books by Sark. That's Sark. She is an amazing artist and philosopher and just a lovely person overall. And her books have been really amazing as far as radical self-love and yeah, just feeling comfy and safe in humanity goes.
Amazing. Anyone else?
I will be the first to admit I do not read much, so I like this question so I can get recommendations from other people so I can start reading.
Excellent. I love that.
Yeah, for me personally, and I am I have a lot of initiatives with my brand, but I do plan on starting a book club because reading is I love reading. I absolutely adore reading now. But the book that I would kind of put on, we kind of talked about this before this interview, is The Devil You Know, Black Manifesto. That book to me is, I haven't finished it yet because I don't want to finish it, but I've literally read the intro twice, chapter 1 twice, chapter 2 twice, chapter 3 twice, chapter 4 twice, and chapter 5 twice, which is one of the reasons why I haven't finished the book. It's an amazing book. It's a different take on talking about Black issues, and it's just incredible. Another book I would recommend is like Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? I feel like that's a classic. And then another book we talked about before we got on is Minor Feelings. That's another book that I've started, and I kind of had to stop myself because I'm already reading like 3 books at one time. So it's, oh my God, like it's like books are incredible, and I think it gives you a different perspective. It gives you just a broader, I don't know, I feel it gives you an overview, and it sharpens your mind and it sharpens your imagination. So I think reading is so important. And I would definitely implore you to read more, just find books. And I am going to create a directory of sorts for people that involves TV shows, escape shows like Insecure, documentaries, books, articles. I'm going to try to have a conglomerate of information that you can come to, whether you're a reader, whether you're a watcher, whether you're a TV show, whether you're a documentary type of person. I want to have all type of stuff for people to I don't know, just have a field day with and learn different things. And I'm going to categorize it by genre and ethnicity and stuff like that, so you can really navigate your way through just wisdom and artistry and stuff like that. So the directory is coming soon. I'm super excited about that, and it's a collaborative effort with people from all over the country.
I am the same with Tamia, where I don't really read books, especially with like 10 of my 2-inch nursing textbooks. There's 10, 2 inches. But with all those books, though, I realized that there is a lot of books out there about self-care and different ways you can really, help people, and so just if you have the time, go out there, because there's billions of books, and so I'm sure there's got to be at least 1 or 10 about the things you're looking for.
Yeah, self-help books too are like amazing. Like it brings I wouldn't say purpose to your life, but it just kind of like centers you and just makes you, it refines the reason, it reminds you of why you're pursuing the things that you're pursuing. So a book that I finished not too long ago, The 4 Agreements, is kind of repetitive, but it's a really dope book to really, that you can like implement into your daily. That's a really dope book, The 4 Agreements. But it looked like we had a question from Latoya Gates. Somebody can read this, or I can read it.
Yeah, I can read it out. I wanted to say before we go to the question, thanks for fulfilling all my dreams about talking about books in front of people and giving recommendations. But also we we are going to be building out our library here at Multicultural Student Services, and so excited too to get these recommendations going, and then folks can borrow some books. And then just as a side note, Darius, I have giant lists specifically for multiracial authors and multiracial.
Yes,
Yeah.
give me some. I would love to get my hands on that list. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll share it with you. It's very long. I'm trying to read them all, but I'm like 10% through. I've been working on it for a couple years. Anyway, so yeah, we do have another question. So, what advice or support or recommendations for people of color who are struggling for visibility when they are minoritized in a minority environment where cultural knowledge and understanding is one-sided? I read that quickly, and I'm not sure if I capture the essence of that.
Sheesh, that's tough. I would say, like, struggling with visibility. Shameless plug, I would say, start with a POC shirt, but I will say, like, just an unbiased opinion, when you wear a POC garment, it has like an aura. Like, when I walk into a room with a POC garment, first off, this is polarizing, but the stuff on the back is like, I cannot wait to turn around. Like, I love it. But aside from my shameless plug, I would say in just taking a pride in your identity. I think with education comes a sense of pride. So if you haven't educated yourself on who you are, where you come from, and some of the things you identify with in just culture, I think it starts there, because I think once you realize who you are, you move different, you walk different, you're perceived different. You walk into a room with a certain energy and aura, and that takes, to someone's point earlier, knowing who you are, knowing yourself, and I think that's a big part of visibility. That's a big part of, like, saying, yo, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? You see me, but I am here, and you're gonna feel me, you're gonna understand me, and you're gonna love me, you're gonna accept me for who I am. And I think that starts with self, right? It's almost like that Cool Runnings scene from that movie where he, like, looks in the mirror and the guy's like yelling from him in the back, like, this is who you are, and he says it, and he's like all pumped up, and then he walks into the bar and he's like rah, rah, like, he just has a different aura when he believes in himself, and he knows who he is. So I think education is like a big proponent to, like, visibility and just I don't know, swag. I know swag is kind of played out, but, like, just you know what I mean. I know, so yeah.
I love that. I think that's so important. I did want to say, like, I wear my POC shirts here, and people, especially I think because people haven't seen them here as much, like, people are like, oh, what's that? Like, yes. So, and also as a reminder for UAA students, you'll be able to get a shirt. We're in the process of ordering them. So that is something that is going to be awesome. And you can tell as long as people register and then I have their email. So even if anyone's watching this right now and you're like, I want to tell my friends, just have them still register, and then I have people's emails, or they can contact me. And then I can make sure folks get shirts. That there's also other ways. I love that the piece about, like, reflecting and getting to know yourself and showing up unapologetically yourself, which can be really, really challenging, right? Like we've talked about in different ways, but that feels like a really important piece that you shared as well. Does anyone else want to answer this question?
I would like to just to reiterate what Mr. Darius and Ms. Sarah said about confidence. Like, that is so important. Knowing who you are that's pretty much all there is to it. If you're not confident in yourself, you don't expect to get that much done if you're struggling with visibility. And especially if you're having a struggle, if you're having trouble finding other people that may that you identify with racially, that I can understand how that can be really hard sometimes. But I think putting in that extra effort to find those who look like you would help you, so they can stand by your side and help make yourselves visible too. Just finding people. Yeah.
I feel like, I know I was just talking a bunch, but I feel like I wanted to add to that too, that it doesn't always have to be people at your workplace or even in your like exact like physical community. And I think sometimes we forget about that like there are people like us that might exist in like different like online communities or associations and ways to connect with them. And I think for me, one of the most life-changing things that happened in my career was being connected with a multiracial knowledge community for student affairs professionals, which is like, those are like, that's me. And the first time I was ever in that space was just a room full of people like me. And it's so validating. And I think that having that experience helps you kind of come back to your specific workplace or your environment and be like, it's not me, it's this space, right? And the ways that I'm being treated or discriminated against, or just the ways that the systems are set up. And you can, come in with that confidence in a really different way as well. So I just want to remind, it's like easy to feel like, well, there's no one at my workplace who is like me. And that's one of the challenges, right? But maybe there's some other places where you can find that connection and validation to help build your confidence and yeah, grow with that. All this stuff about cool runnings, y'all. It's funny.
I'll go. Something is like, if you can't speak up, you can definitely show out. Like Darius said, clothing can go a long way, and nowadays fashion is a big thing, and so you can really start to, if you don't want to talk about it, you can show it through like your cultural clothing, and like because like clothing can make you very confident. And so if you wear like your own pieces, you can really spark that conversation for other people to learn, but also you can inspire others who are probably thinking it about doing it but haven't had the motivation to do it. And so being that first person can go a long way. And so
Thanks, y'all. I'm wondering if looks like LaToya added some context too about just maybe sort of, and this is maybe what you meant by one-sided, like one-sided awareness or understanding of culture in terms of like forms of entertainment, without a deep understanding of history, or context or systems of oppression. And I mean, yeah, there's a long history of that for folks who are racially marginalized, right? Like our cultures and our music and ways of being and our food are seen as consumable and are like often lifted up as cool, but not in the true context of our full cultures, right? Like there's so many examples of this. But yeah, I think that is such an important point you made, and thanks for adding some context to that. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that.
I did it again. I think cultural appropriation is like, I'm not surprised, because I know that the relevance of like, specifically Black culture is so popularized. So to see Black culture, sometimes, like I said, Black culture, to see cultural appropriation is like, I'm not surprised. I'm almost numb to it. Like it's weird how, society perceives us, but like society also wants to be and emulate the way we move, the way we jump, the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we dress, the way we wear our hair. So it's just really weird conundrum to be in. people want to understand, people want to, play like us or hoop like us, but people don't want to understand us, right? So cultural appropriation is just really weird, and just seeing it on social media, the TikToks and Instagrams, the challenges that, happen and people don't get credit for. It's just, I don't know. It's just a weird time to be in right now. But I don't know. I just take it with a grain of salt, and I tell myself that there's bigger fish to fry. And that's just kind of how I move on that topic.
Thanks for sharing that. As we close out, I just wanted to ask you for if there's anything else that you wanted to share with folks listening, and just something that you've been sitting with or that's been on your mind as we have been talking here. So again, can it just go if you're ready?
Is that directed to me or to everybody?
Everyone.
Oh, well, let me think. I would, I don't know. I think I would say to everybody, and this is just aside from like social stuff, but just in your pursuit of your happiness, in pursuit of your dreams, your goal, your vision, the worst thing anybody can say is no, right? Never be afraid to speak up or ask a question, or ask for an opportunity. Second to that, it's like squeaky wheel always gets the oil. Always be persistent and consistent in your pursuit of your dreams and your happiness and your solitude. And then third, just trust but verify, right? Trust the people that surround you, but always verify, and always give your best. So that has nothing to do with like the topic that we're on, but just in the pursuit of your passion, whether it's school, your happiness, an opportunity or whatever. It's just like, pursue that. We only live once. Life is short. And it would suck to wonder, a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 from now to wonder what if. So take advantage of now and get busy living. That would be my advice to anybody.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight, and I hope that you're all getting the love that you deserve in your life, especially from yourself.
I also want to thank everyone for being here and just everyone sharing their perspective on all these unique and amazing questions that I never would have thought of asking as well. And one thing that just really stood out to me tonight was just the talk about confidence and going out on unapologetically and just being intentional about who you are, because confidence just changes everything. It really does. If you want to be noticed out there and you want people to learn about your culture and the struggles of our culture, continue to be that voice for your people or just anyone. And if you don't listen to anything tonight, just confidence is the best thing you can ever do. Get to know yourself, get to know the people around you, and look at other things from other people's perspective as well.
Well, this has been amazing. And first, I just want to thank everyone who helped plan this. So thank you to folks at UAA, Cuckoo Gupta, Holly Johanknick, Sarah Shives, Alexis Rasley, I'm sorry, and Darius Northern. We started talking this through, I think actually like 3 months ago. And I'm just amazed at how it's come together and this amazing platform that we're trying out that is new to me. So thanks, Darius, for bringing that side of it to this creative side. And I just feel like so lucky to be in community and to be here with our panelists. So Thank you, Jesse, Jerica, and Tamia. Y'all did an amazing job and asked such good questions, and just really added so much and really reminded us about the importance of this topic, but also like what y'all are going through and care about, and confidence and all these things, and being in community. Darius, thanks for hanging out with us in Alaska. I do have to say, at one point you were talking about the weather in Oregon, and as someone who just moved from Oregon, I'm not sure you've got a lot on us here in Alaska. We just had like wild ice everywhere. But y'all, it does rain a lot in Oregon, and it's very great for like 8 months in a row. So thanks everyone for being here. We will send, for everyone who registered, you'll get an email. So you have the link to this recording, which is on YouTube. There'll be some follow-up stuff, and we'll have our next Conversation Cafe in April. There's a lot of other great events in March, and so we didn't want to clutter everyone's calendars with everything. So we will share all that stuff out. And again, just an amazing thank you to our speakers today. Y'all did great. I hope everyone has a good night. And it's cool. I feel famous for being on YouTube Live. Good job, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming.